So let's end by naming what often rises when we put someone in these bottom two categories on the boundary pyramid. That good old grief word again, guilt and power. You may grieve what never was. You may feel guilt for giving up or not trying harder. You may wonder if you're being selfish or dramatic, but let me tell you something. Peace is not something you earn by being good. It's something you claim by being honest. It is not cruel to choose yourself. It is not wrong to let go of what hurts. And it is not unkind to honor your truth and protect yourself. Cordial and no contact are not about control or punishment. They are about clarity, nervous system protection, and reclaiming your right to emotional safety. And you are allowed to live from that place. Welcome to Grow with Robin Breckenridge, a podcast about stepping into the most fully expressed, aligned, and conscious version of yourself. Here, we dive into the real work of personal growth, establishing boundaries, understanding your patterns, building self-trust, healing emotional wounds, and creating relationships that feel safe, authentic, and fulfilling. I'm Robin, a life and relationship coach, and in each episode, we'll explore the tools, insights, and conversations that will help you not just improve your life and relationships, but truly transform them. You don't have to just go through it. Let's grow through it, and let's do it together. Hi, and thanks for joining the podcast again. Today, we're stepping into the final episode in this series on the boundary pyramid. Woohoo! We did it. And if you've been here through the sacred, trust, and shared interest categories, thank you for walking this path with me. You've probably already noticed how the pyramid is less about labeling others and more about returning to your own truth. It's about clarifying what feels safe, what feels aligned, and how much access do I want to give to this person based on what is true now, not based on history, guilt, fear, or fantasy. So today we're exploring the outermost layers of the boundary pyramid, the cordial and no contact categories. So just a reminder, for every episode in this series, there will be a link to the graphic of the boundary pyramid if you'd like something to look at and follow along with, and a link to be able to print out or download a little cheat sheet for the different categories on the pyramid that is just a really quick way to remember what each one represents. Now, back to cordial and no contact. These categories hold the least access, but they often bring up a lot of emotions like grief, confusion, shame, resentment, anger, and sometimes even doubt. These are the places we tend to wrestle the most with, whether it's okay to create distance, especially when we were taught that closeness equals goodness and distance equals failure. But here's what I want you to remember before we even begin. Peace is not selfish. Clarity is not cruel. And honoring your nervous system is not betrayal. It's really the only way. So let's start with the cordial category. The cordial category is reserved for someone that A, you do not like, or B, you do not care to have a deeper relationship with. That's it. It's that simple and also that nuanced. These are not people you're trying to build with. You're not gathering data. You're not investing more energy. You're not hoping it might turn into something deeper. You're keeping things extremely boundaried, contained, and surface level on purpose. The rule of engagement here is, hi, how are you? And that's it. Now, I am truly defining what cordial means in this category because I think cordial means something different to everyone, right? When I'm teaching the boundary pyramid, cordial means, hi, how are you? And that's it. You can smile, you can be polite, but you're not opening up your heart You're not over-explaining, and you're not making them a part of your emotional life or even getting into conversations with this person. This is a powerful category for old friends that you've outgrown, coworkers who feel gossipy, draining, or unsafe, and you do not really have to interact with them. There isn't a whole lot of shared interest. Maybe they're in a different department or on a different floor. You only see them sometimes or at staff events. Extended family members where repair is not possible. People you feel obligated to see but don't want to share yourself with. You're not faking it. You are containing it. Cordial is not inauthentic. It's boundaried. Now, before we move on, I want to pause and revisit the shared interest category briefly, because there's a little thing with the shared interest and trust category where sometimes people will try to put people that really belong in the shared interest category into the trust category. And also, sometimes people will put people who belong in the shared interest category in the cordial category based on how they feel. Slightly different, right? Like in the trust category, it's usually that we feel deeply towards someone and we have a lot of love for them and we want them to be in the trust category. When it comes to the cordial category, this is usually where we actually feel a lot of resentment. Maybe we feel a lot of emotional distance, or maybe like truly we don't want to interact as much with that person as we are, but we feel like we have to, or we can't get out of the relationship. So sometimes you feel emotionally distant from someone. Again, resentful maybe the dynamic feels cold, disappointing, or maybe it's just heavy. And your first instinct might be to move them to cordial, or maybe even no contact. But here's the key question to ask yourself. Do I say more than, hi, how are you? And that's it to this person. This happens all the time. Someone will come to me and say, my mom is in cordial. My brother is in cordial. You know, I have had it with them. They're rude. I barely interact with them. And I'll say, okay, well, do you talk to them? Like, what do your interactions look like? Yeah, like my mom will text me here and there, or we'll talk once or twice a week. And I say, okay, do you say more than, hi, how are you? And that's it. And they'll be like, yeah. Now, again, this isn't about being rigid. It's about being clear. I'll say, okay, well, that sounds more like a shared interest relationship. And maybe the shared interest is family, but there's a lot of like water under the bridge in this relationship. Maybe there's some things that we need to work out with ourselves, like learning how to grieve that relationship and get to a place of acceptance. Maybe there are some conversations we need to have with that person, but that's the key vetting component here. Do you say more than, hi, how are you? And that's it. It really looks like this. If you see someone out, hi, how are you? Good, good. Keep moving. So if the answer is yes, that you do say more than, hi, how are you? And that's it. If you're still engaging, venting, seeking advice, navigating shared logistics, or wanting something different from the connection, then this person is likely still in a shared interest relationship. The discomfort you're feeling might not mean it's time to cut off contact. It might mean it's time to tighten up your boundaries. Shared interest is where many people live when there's co-parenting going on. And again, the shared interest is the co-parenting. Ongoing family involvement. Maybe they are in your family and you see them at family get-togethers or interactions. Friendships where trust has eroded, but contact continues. Relationships where there's history, but no emotional safety. So it doesn't mean the person is safe enough for full access, but it also doesn't mean that they need to be cut out of your life. You may just need to stop over disclosing, stop over functioning, and stop expecting emotional support that they cannot give. That shift alone can bring massive peace without going all the way to cordial or no contact. So back to cordial. There's another layer I want to touch on. Sometimes the feelings in the cordial category are intense. Like, it's not that we're going down this pyramid and we're caring less and less. Sometimes you may feel resentful, disgusted, or even betrayed. You might feel cold or checked out. And those feelings are valid. But again, ask yourself, is this a feeling I need to process with this person or a relationship that I need to reclassify? Cordial is a space where you protect your peace by not feeding the dynamic because we either A, do not like this person, or B, do not care to have a deeper relationship. So there's no need for confrontation. You just don't offer more. Here's what that might look like. Keeping conversations very, very, very surface. Like, hey, how are you? Good, good. Great to see you. Keep moving. Not following up, not initiating, not engaging. Avoiding any type of deep topic, which might mean like, wow, it was really nice to see you. Keep moving. And choosing not to be emotionally available, even if that person is trying to be emotionally available to you. Now, I'm going to give you guys an example. I one time went to an interaction where there was a relationship that I had with someone at this particular party, where there was a long history of this person being judgmental, talking about me behind my back. This is someone that I did not feel like had good energy that I wanted to be around, but we had a shared interest. We had someone in common. So I had gone to this person's child's birthday party. They were there and we were in a house full of people and I'm in the kitchen. And before I walked in, because I told you guys this is still a trick that I use to this day, even though this was a while ago. And I kind of went through who I knew was going to be at the party and where they went in my categories. And I had flagged her because I knew she was going to be there. And I thought, you know what, this is someone that I would really like to have in Cordial, because there were times that I tried to make a shared interest relationship work with her, like saying more than hi, how are you? And that's it. And I just felt like really overexposed and uncomfortable and not safe. So I went in knowing that, you know, she was in my Cordial category and we were in the kitchen and she came up to me and in front of a bunch of people, she said, so I heard you're a life coach now. And if you can hear the tone in my voice, there was a lot of judgment in the way that she phrased that. And there was a past version of me that would have tried to prove, you know, and when we prove, we're sick, right? When we're in the energy of proving, we have someone that's probably in shared interest or cordial or no contact that we're trying to get to understand us and see us. And yet they shouldn't have the access to us, right? So I looked at her back and I said, I am a life coach now. How are you doing? And she was like, oh, I'm awful. I need a life coach myself. And I said, well, so good seeing you. And I walked away. And I remember going, oh my gosh, that's so uncomfortable. I feel so awkward. There were like people in the kitchen when we had this interaction. I had that little flare up of guilt that was like, oh man, I did something bad. I should have like continued the conversation. And then I finished the party. I got in my car and I had this moment with myself where I was like, we did not sell ourselves out. Like I did not want to talk to her. And I wasn't rude. It was a little bit awkward just because I didn't like buy into the hook of that conversation, but I kept it light. I wasn't rude and I didn't have an interaction with her because anything I was going to say about what I was doing for a living now would have probably been turned against me to put me down. And I really didn't want to give that person that opportunity. So again, this isn't about like weird interactions where we're rude to someone. I acknowledged her. I said it was nice to see her and I kept moving. So when I got in that car, the emotional freedom I felt from that decision was huge. And that's the power of the cordial boundary category. It's like emotional insulation. You don't have to shut the door. You just stop inviting people inside who are not safe enough to come in. Now let's move into the outermost layer of the boundary pyramid, the no contact category. This category is reserved for people who are emotionally and or physically unsafe. So this would be people who repeatedly violate your boundaries, abuse, manipulate, or gaslight you, threaten your emotional well-being, create anxiety, trauma responses, or dysregulation in your nervous system. So when I teach this, I always say, this is not people that you leave an interaction with and you're annoyed. This is someone you leave an interaction with and you feel destabilized. So I want to be very clear. You are allowed to create distance, complete distance with people who are not safe. No contact means you don't respond to their calls or texts. You don't engage. If you see them, you leave. Or at the very least, you don't engage with them at all. You can block these people. You can mute them. You can unfollow them. You can let people in your life know not to bring them up or expect connection. Okay. Because a lot of times when we put people in no contact, we might have mutual friends. I just had a client the other day that broke up with someone extremely toxic. And there was someone in her life that didn't know how toxic this person was and would always bring up like, hey, did you hear so-and-so is doing this now? Or he would give this toxic person information about her. And so part of her no contact boundaries was to communicate to that person that she had in common with the toxic person and say, listen, I'm not interested in hearing about him and I do not want him to know anything about me. And I know that when people are going through breakups, like sometimes people will tell you about your ex or who they're dating now or what they're doing or gossip about them as a way to connect with you. And maybe that feels like a knife in the wound that you're trying to heal. So part of no contact is not just that you are not in contact with that person. It's that your nervous system is not in contact with this person's energy. That might be hearing a story about them from, again, someone you have in common. That could be seeing their life on social media. I can tell you if I had $1 for every time someone called me in an absolute panic and complete nervous system dysregulation because they saw a picture of their ex on a vacation or with a new partner. And your nervous system doesn't know the difference between you seeing that picture and, of course, just the surface projection of someone's life and you actually being on the beach witnessing your ex with their new partner. People will call me and go, why am I so upset? It was just an Instagram post. It's like, it's not just an Instagram post. It's dysregulating to your nervous system. Okay. So this boundary category is not about punishment. It's about liberation and protecting yourself. And here's the part that I wish more people knew. No contact does not have to be permanent. No contact is the category that is probably the most useful when you're healing. Like if you're recovering from a breakup, maybe you need to put that person in no contact while you heal. And then maybe down the road, you have way more indifference in the relationship and you see them out and it's a cordial interaction, or maybe even one day they could be in shared interest. And the shared interest could be your past history, maybe you have friends in common. One other thing that I want to mention is that it's very common for people when they're breaking up to come to me and say, well, we want to be friends, or this person wants to be friends, or I want to be friends with them. And of course, I'm not going to shoot anybody's dream down. Like if you want to be friends with your exes, that takes maturity. And I think it's totally doable. I think though, every relationship needs a period of time, one, where we can reflect on the relationship and look at what we learned and what we learned about ourselves. And two, we need to kind of gear shift. We can't really go from overnight, we were in a committed romantic relationship to the next day we're friends. I think that usually we need to create a new normal before that's really true. A lot of the time we will hold on to relationships and kind of put them in the friend category because we're just not ready to entirely let go of that relationship. So the no contact category is a really great place to put people while we heal. Maybe we had a falling out with a friend or a family member, and we need to put them in no contact for a period of time. Because sometimes we need space to grieve, to regulate, to see clearly. You might go no contact with someone after a breakup, after a betrayal, when shifting from partners to friends, like I just mentioned, during a highly activating time of your life, when you've realized that staying in contact is keeping you stuck in a dynamic or in a relationship. No contact can be a season that becomes a decision or one that shifts into another category later. This is especially true in healing work. Sometimes we need to take a full step back just to remember who we are without that person's influence. Now, one of my favorite stories from a past client has to do with these bottom two categories on the boundary pyramid. I was working with a client for a long time, and part of her background was that her dad had abandoned her and her mom when she was a small child. And she really had nothing to do with this man. And now she was a grown woman. She had her own child, and there was a death in her dad's side of the family. And she had maintained some relationships with the people in his family, just not him. So her uncle had passed away, and she called me. We had a session, and she was, saying, what am I going to do? I'm going to see my dad, this guy that abandoned me when I was a child, that I have so much resentment and confusion. And, my life wasn't the same because of the decisions he made. So we used the boundary pyramid to kind of decide. And so we decided that her dad was in no contact. She didn't talk to him. She hadn't talked to him since she was young. And we decided that for that funeral, she was going to put her dad in Cordial. She trusted herself enough to do that. That if she saw him, instead of ignoring him and having to make that whole experience about staying away from him and having that emotional charge, she just decided, if I see him, I'll say, hi, how are you? And that's it, and keep it moving. And that's exactly what she did. She called me after the funeral, and she was so proud of herself. She's like, I saw him. He came up to me. He said, hi. I said, hi, how are you? And that's it. I kept it moving. Got through the funeral, got to visit with that side of the family that I hadn't seen in a while. And we were going to put him back in no contact. Now, this is how these type of situations work. This is why this can't be a rigid system, and there's so much nuance. She put him back in no contact after that funeral. And then a few days later, she got a call from her dad, and they had a huge repair. He owned everything about how he had abandoned her, how he had been struggling with alcoholism, how sorry he was, how he wanted to rebuild a relationship with her in a way that felt safe for her. And fast forward, this client began a new relationship with someone that had been in the no contact category and had deeply impacted her for most of her life. She took it slow. He took it slow. And the last that I heard, her daughter had a grandpa. Her daughter was able to meet her dad, and they were able to start over in a relationship in which she had boundaries. They could repair and go forward. So I love that story because we don't just stick people in categories. New information comes up. As we change and develop, things change in our own life. Our needs change. We can be more flexible with our boundaries or more rigid depending on what's needed. So in that particular example, I'm showing you that sometimes we have someone in a category and we place them in a different category for a period of time based off of what is the next kindest choice for us. But in that particular situation, her having boundaries allowed a new relationship to develop. And now her dad is in shared interest, and they're recreating a relationship that they didn't have when she was growing up. So let's end by naming what often rises when we put someone in these bottom two categories on the boundary pyramid. That good old grief word again, guilt and power. You may grieve what never was. You may feel guilt for giving up or not trying harder. You may wonder if you're being selfish or dramatic, but let me tell you something. Peace is not something you earn by being good. It's something you claim by being honest. It is not cruel to choose yourself. It is not wrong to let go of what hurts. And it is not unkind to honor your truth and protect yourself. Cordial and no contact are not about control or punishment. They are about clarity, nervous system protection, and reclaiming your right to emotional safety. And you are allowed to live from that place. So here are some questions I'd like you to reflect on, because remember, in the sacred and trust category, we wrote out some characteristics that someone would need to have in order for them to fit in those categories. For the shared interest, we didn't. And for cordial and no contact, we're also not writing characteristics out of what someone would need to have. Because as we're going down this pyramid, there's a higher and higher likelihood that this person might be an a-hole, or you just don't care to have a deeper relationship with them. So I want you to think about this. Who in your life might belong in the cordial category? Are you feeling emotional distance with someone, but still giving them deeper access than you want? Is there anyone that you need to place in no contact, either temporarily or permanently, to protect your peace? Now, remember, I didn't even get into how the heck do we actually put this into action in your life. This is really about building awareness of where people go. So please don't feel like you need to know like how to take someone from the shared interest category and put them in cordial and know exactly what to do. You don't need to do that. But just knowing where people go, like sometimes something that's really powerful is going like, whoa, I have someone who would totally go in the no contact category in my shared interest. No wonder I feel that dysregulated. I want you just to start thinking about these 5 categories: sacred, trust, shared interest, cordial, no contact, and start thinking about where people go. So let me leave you with this. Boundaries are not about controlling others. They're about connection to yourself. You get to choose the access you offer based on what's real, what's safe, and what supports your healing. Cordial is enough. No contact is allowed. And boundaries, every single one, are an act of love. So here's a mantra that I'll leave you with today. I do not owe anyone access to my heart. I am allowed to create space when closeness is no longer safe. Distance is not failure. It's wisdom. I choose peace. I choose clarity. I choose me. Thank you so much for walking through the boundary pyramid with me. This has been one of my favorite series to create, and I hope it's helped you feel less alone and more empowered in your relationships. In conjunction with doing this series, I have started creating a course on the boundary pyramid. Not sure exactly when it's going to be out, so if anybody's interested, go ahead and put your email in my system through my website, and you will be the first to know when we start getting this thing out and rolling. And I think that this course is going to help a lot of people. So if you have listened to these episodes and you are scratching your head like, what in the heck? I just want you to know, hang tight. I got you. We are going to do this together. In our next upcoming episodes, I'm going to talk about how the heck do we put these boundaries into action? What does it look like to communicate them? How do we make a roadmap so we can actually do this, and so much more? We are not done talking about boundaries. And just let me tell you, I don't know. We're going to do this series. We're going to talk about boundaries, and then we're going to probably come back and talk about boundaries more and more and more. So thank you to everyone who DM'd me and commented on this series about how the system is helping them or has got them thinking in a different way or is just interested in learning more. Okay. Stay tuned. We're going to keep going. I'll see you next week. That's it for today's episode. Thank you so much for being here and for doing this work. If this episode resonated with you, I'd love to hear your thoughts. Come connect with me over on TikTok at Robin Breckenridge or Instagram at Coach with Robin, where I share even more insights, tools, and conversations around boundaries, self-trust, relational healing, and so much more. And just a quick reminder, this podcast is for educational and personal growth purposes only. The insights and tools I share are based on my experience as a life and relationship coach and are meant for general guidance. Each person's story is unique, and the nuances of individual experiences can't always be addressed in this format. What's shared here may not be applicable to every situation, especially those involving abuse, oppression, severe mental illness, or systematic harm. If you or someone you know is in crisis, please seek support from a qualified mental health professional or emergency resources. Thank you for listening and for showing up for yourself in this way. Take care, and I'll see you next time.